to the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Policy Drafting Committee. Our last meeting was February 6th, and so we have a lot to catch up on, but as usual, the time of 4:30, we have to be out of here before 6 o'clock because there's another meeting, and so I don't think it's gonna take us that long to do that. So basically, what we've got on the agenda today, so that everybody will know it, and we are live and by CAT TV, is to go through it, public comments, minutes from February 6th, policy number 4003, bullying prevention of adults, policy number 5008, students who are homeless, policy 5050, discipline and pupils suspension and expulsion of students, policy 5085, search and seizure, policy 4001, harassment of employees, policy 3100, transportation, and 2 new policies on policy 2401, access control of visitors management. That's a recommendation of new. And then policy 2470, 5 emergency preparedness drill. So I don't know whether we get through all of these, and we'll take them one at a time, but for everybody's here, I wanted to ask if there are any changes or comments that you want to do to that agenda, please.
We have to make sure that we do 9 and 10.
Yeah, because we have to get them out to the June board meetings and the August board meetings, because legislature didn't give us much time. They have to be enacted by the start of school.
So we can move them up, or we can let them stay right there. If we start to move and it looks like we're not moving fast enough, then we can just skip and go right to those. Is that the way you want to do it? Okay.
Yeah.
Thumbs up for that. Okay, then with that, I don't normally, with introduction, let's say who's here, so.
Laura Boudreau, Assistant Superintendent.
Jonathan Phipps, Equity Coordinator.
Leon Johnson, MAU.
Jim Polkeen, Superintendent.
Holly Anderson, Director of Facilities Management and Operations.
Lisa Poplaski, Administrative Assistant.
I'm Megan Morgan-Puglisi. I am the public and the president of the SWBEA teacher unit.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, public comments.
I have one. This is one of the weirdest meetings I've been to. Okay, so just to forget. I just wanted to say that first off, I really want to say that I appreciate the fact that this board is relooking at a lot of different policies, in particular 4001 and 4003. I think the piece on strengthening the non-retaliation clause in those is really important, and also particularly in 4003, although it's also in 4001, the alternative complaint process I think is pretty crucial for allowing employees to feel safe with these things. So just wanted to give my support on that.
Okay, thank you. We'll work on some comments when it time comes for that. So, any other public comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to the next agenda items. We have minutes from February 6th. I read them all, and all of the other members that probably got to receive the package had an opportunity to read them. Are there any comments concerning the minutes from February 6th? Hearing none and seeing none, the minutes are accepted as presented in the package. The next item on the agenda is policy number 4003, bullying prevention of adults. And the blessed with how this committee works is Lisa has an opportunity to prepare these things on board so that we can see them and read them at the same time, and any changes, we can, put those live on during the meeting, for recommendation. This particular policy has been through, and we had a lot of different, comments made and some additions that we heard in public comment in public, and then we have Jonathan, you had a bunch of these changes that was added into this one as well. So, we, can start out, is bullying and, discrimination prevention of adults is what we wanted to do. Has changed that name, and what's highlighted in yellow is the changes. So if we want to go through this and speak to something in specifically, we can. I'll just do the header part there that was added in here in terms of district to prevent the occurrence of bullying and discrimination is what's added in there. In their schools, bullying is in the form of a dangerous and disrespectful behavior that is not permitted or will be tolerated. Discrimination, be it intentional or unintentional, is an unequal treatment of people or persons for the reason which has nothing to do with their legal rights or ability. So with that, the policy goes in and takes some definitions. And I'll ask if you want to make comments for that, John.
So the only things that I added, and I added these in relation to FIPA and EEOC, and I'm always going to mess up those acronyms, but FIPA is Vermont Fair Employment Practices Act. It's a legal framework in which Vermont businesses and employers have to follow that protects individuals from different various degrees of harassment, be it sexual or demographic based, or discrimination. I also added things that are from the EEOC, that's Equal Employment, I'm always going to mess up that acronym, opportunities, and I always forget to see. But like that's a federal framework that basically outlines how we are in the United States, companies, organizations, and institutions are to engage in practices not only for between hiring and workplace relations to make sure that all workers' rights are respected. So that's where I pulled everything from. The intentional and unintentional discrimination part is ripped entirely from FIPA itself. There is a difference. Obviously, we all are aware of what intentional discrimination looks like. However, many people are not necessarily privy or aware that unintentional discrimination does actually exist. And it is something that I feel that any employee or workplace should take account for. That's basically things such as if you read through the policy, I kind of outline what entirely unintentional discrimination is. Just basically workplace practices that have an unintentional consequence of favoring one demographic or over another. Added other various definitions of stereotypes, what an adverse action is, and all of this again was pulled from either FIPA or EEOC. So it's pretty much in line with Vermont state or United States federal law. And it's pretty much covering just the definitions part, unless you want me to move on to the next part, which is your show. So
No, that's the definition part. Unless if someone else has some questions, I like the way the definitions are added in here and the wording for the definitions. I don't think anyone would have a problem with the language, but we can do that in terms of animosity and some other word, malice and whatever was in here. That just, I don't think it's something that anything can take place those in terms of the wording. I was looking at certain things. Normally when we have the policy, we want it to be general animus to make sure that everybody that looks at it at the levels in terms of the public and the administrators and so forth and the students, that they read and understand it all. And I think this is pretty clear. So if they come back with some other comments, we'll hit them later. So you can move on to the next section there.
So Next section just acknowledges notice of prohibition against bullying, and then I added in the discrimination part, basically outlining that the districts recognize that events of discrimination, be them intentional or unintentional, have no place within the SVSU, and thus would need to be investigated, resolved, and rectified if possible. That's basically, we need to establish a framework of doing that. That can easily happen. Not easily, but it can happen. And that's part number 2. That was basically me adding discrimination, and outlining what we would have to do to actively address incidences of discrimination within the SU.
Okay, does anybody else have some comment for that section so far going out through? I don't, I thought it was right on key. So that brings us to reporting and investigation and notification of bullying and r/discrimination reporting.
So again, this is just me adding discrimination. The only major add-on to here is an anonymous reporting system. The district in which it formally basically outlined that the district shall communicate to the school community the means to make an anonymous reporting system of bullying or discrimination. However, it did not outline exactly how the system would exist or how it would be maintained or run or even monitored. I just added basically, since this would involve workplace incidences or workplace or employee relations, that would probably be needed to be maintained and monitored by the SVU's human resources departments. That way, we would have a mechanism that actively has eyes and is aware of any anonymously reported tip of discrimination towards any set of employees. How we would do that, there's a number of ways we can do that, but I didn't put that in here simply because we just want to make a commitment that we would do that.
That was the alternate complaint process.
Oh,
We get into that, that's the part that I thought you was talking about, giving an alternate complaint process for that. Employees may file a complaint with both the district or the supervisory union or with the state or federal agency.
so that's a direct rip from another policy and other policies that are found within the state, within our actual SVSU, that explicitly outlines different ways to address incidences of bullying or discrimination if you feel like your current predicament is not adequately addressed. Those include the Equal Employment Opportunity Office or Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, or the Vermont Attorney's General Office, Civil Rights Unit. That would just include your contact details, information, and stuff like that, and timelines and when you have to actually file a date. There's a
300 days.
there's a strict timeline.
Yeah, that's good. I think that's very good. So I read it all and so we'll look at that. So are there any comments, concerns and so forth? If not, and hearing none and seeing none, this particular policy, I would recommend that we move on to go to SVSU for warning at the next meeting.
Go to the first board that
The first
Starts
board.
out.
You always get me.
Okay.
Yeah, no, the SVSU on the first board.
Next week we have Union Elementary, Arlington, we actually have Sandgate this
Yeah,
Thursday.
literally will be able to hit every board this month because of the timing of this meeting.
All right, very good.
Yeah, there's no one's met yet, it's the first
Yep.
meeting of June.
So there's no objections, and this board would then recommend that this policy move forward with appropriate boards as they meet on that time. Thank you. The next item on the list is policy 5008, students who are homeless. This policy is back to us just for the final review before going out to be adopted. I don't know, I only had one comment, and that was just earlier about maybe a name change, but we're not ready to do anything with a name change on this particular policy. So I didn't get any other comments from anywhere else concerning this policy unless we have some here. I thought it was well put together. So I don't see any or hear none, then I would recommend that we approve this policy to move on for adoption
Yep.
at the next appropriate board to meet, within the time frame. As they schedule. Okay. So, next policy is disciplinary, discipline of pupils, suspension and expulsion of students. And there was a few additions in terms of the header, the name, and so forth going on into this. And the correction I think we talked about last time in here was down line 23, administration, and line 35, superintendent slash designee. And on the second page, basically, line 5, the school principal may, in consultation with the superintendent or their designee, suspend pupils up to 10 days or less for violation of the school board policy. And then on 9, the superintendent may suspend pupils for 10 days or less for a violation without the approval of the school board. So that's basically the changes associated with that. If we went to 21 and 22, we had opportunities for students to tell his or her side of the story and present evidence, any evidence relevant to the allegations prior to the imposition of the suspension. Posing of the suspension. So those were the changes associated with that policy. Do you have any changes and anything else that we want to look at or move on this particular policy? So hearing none, seeing none, then we'll just ask that we move this policy on for the adoption and be presented to the boards as they need this month. Okay, thank you. Next policy on is search and seizure. And this is policy number 5085. This policy is back for adoption going through. And there was any changes that came back from the school board, but just to highlight the things that we talked about and made in here, this policy is the computer on line 10, computer or slash other electronic devices is what was being that was requested to be added. And then 36, search by school personnel shall not be done at the request of law enforcement. We made that clarification up. And 37, unless in an emergency situation, drug, alcohol, safety concerns exist, and in the best judgment of the school administrator. So those were things that we talked about at last meeting about putting in and went around. And so there's no changes to those. On the second page for that, we added in on 3 and 4 is that our knowledge of any students. And so read that to make it sound, understand what it says here. It's a long sentence. I'm gonna start download and otherwise reproduce by student personnel at will or without the consent or knowledge of any other student or any student is what was added in there. Our knowledge of any student was added. And so those were comments and structure that we wanted to have in this particular policy. Unless there were some others here, there were none submitted during the process up until the point that we are now back for adoption of this policy. Looking around to see whether we have any additional comments. None, we have nothing online. And so I would recommend that we submit search and seizure policy number 5085 on for the first board meeting next to be adopted. Okay.
Excuse me.
The next policy on the list is harassment of employees. And the names was, we discussed this particular policy last month, and we had a lot of different things that were edited and modified in here, but the bottom line, this policy is around for us to put to adoption. And Arlington and Sandgate was added on to the list in the header that wasn't in there last time, and so and consigned, the header was redone to add in the Southwest Vermont Union Elementary Schools. So all of that was added in. The form of harassment was made clear in the statement in here. And I want to, if someone else wants to speak to those, just go ahead and read some of the part of that. Are we all good?
Good.
We're all good. So it's really good, clear language, and it gives them on the second page, and then item 2 to give an example of what unlawful harassment can include and so forth. But it's good. So everything that's on the third page was like designated persons that we talked about that needed to happen and so forth was added in there. The investigation process, filing process, alternate complaint process, and what the different agencies that go to, and the confidentiality piece that was added in. So those were things that we heard a few comments about in terms of the public comments. Everything else that was stricken out, and this time will be here in Xenon. If we're all good, then we'll just ask that we move this policy on in the adopted form for SVSU and other boards as they meet this month. Okay, all right, very good. The next item, I'm moving right along here. You have to do your homework for everybody. Transportation. We went through the process, but we had not did anything in terms of the warning. So this would be a warning of the changes here this time for the transportation. So in the header of the transportation is that the policy and the board of directors of the Southwest Supervisory Union, Southwest Vermont Union Elementary School Districts and Mount Edson Union School District. We added Arlington and Sandgate in the header for that. Down to line 30, these 29 and 30, 31, VSDE Rule 9300 applies to all transportation, both allowed and extraordinary. The school districts are responsible for these costs, not the supervisory union. So that was pointed out there at the bottom to make sure that all of the districts know when they get some additional things that the SVSU is not the one that's paying for that. You could make any other comments for that? No. Okay. Then we highlighted in here and had some discussion on was that on the third page was line 10, bus companies is responsible for training, supporting, and supervising bus drivers in the use of the PBIS. And PBI, Positive Behavior Intervention Support.
Very good. Been paying.
Okay.
I just messed that one up. It's like, wow.
And Leanne, just so you know, we've started that process.
Okay, thanks. The process is already in play. So with that, and if nothing else, I would ask that we submit this policy on for one at the next appropriate board for this month. So, thank you. That brings us to the two and the latest policies that was added on. And the first policy is policy number 2400. I want to thank Lisa for bringing this policy in, putting it in the policy format. We just received, just last week, it got all kind of notes from the School Board Association. This was policy reference F4, and asked that we had a timeline, at least there was a timeline, we had to put this in place. And so I want to say thank you for going ahead and preparing that and putting a header on
Good night.
for that. Thank you
Thanks, guys.
for putting the header to the policy. And the definitions, we didn't make any changes in this policy based on what was recommended by the Vermont School Board Association. It has included some administrative regs and responsibilities in there. And so the basic thing, this policy is in addition to, in reference, our policies that are in place is policy, well, the legal reference for this is 16 VSA 1484, and the cross reference with it would be policy 2450 and policy 2475, emergency preparedness drill. The first one was security cameras and use. So these are going to stay in place right now until we see that we may be able to do something later on if necessary. So I don't have anything else that we want to do, any discussion concerning this policy.
I'm just pleased that we can move it this quickly.
Yes, okay. Thank you again. So hearing none and seeing on, I will make sure that we put this policy on the one at the next available board that meets this month as a recommendation. Okay. The next policy on the list is policy number 2475, in emergency preparedness drills. This policy was another policy that was passed down from the school board. It's F3 as a reference for a required policy. And thank you again, Lisa, for going ahead and putting it into the board's format so that we can pass this on the header and giving it a number, a district number. It has in the same format the statement of the policy, the definition of optional base response drills. And what that means is that the district is now looking at, should be looking at ways that there may be different actions by the educators and students to take if confronted by an active shooter or intruder, which is really the differences in this policy. And so the school site operations is the school buildings and operated by the school district. So it went on to give some administrative directions for the superintendent, and the designee will ensure certain things to happen and that we should meet certain requirements by July 21, 24. One of the other things in here was to let parents know that we would be, parents or guardians would be notified no later than one school day before an optional based response drill is conducted. And so, anyone have any conversation or concern in that, or how that's gonna roll out for you? Here, none, well, we could always come.
You don't have enough time.
Yeah.
Thursday or Friday?
Yeah. So we're gonna start at the process to move on. The only thing when I read this, I said, we're doing everything that it says specifically school site. What about the activities for our students that are off-site or on trips? And maybe that's something that comes down the road in terms of they need to be aware of mentally what they should be doing if they're somewhere out there on a trip and something happened, what they should be doing, some kind of learning. But this policy don't go down that road, address anything like that. And so that was the only thing that I had that said that may be something coming down the road to think about it, because it's happening all over the place since we're doing this on site and so forth here. And I'm saying, we send them to a game, they're on another school site, but they still, the students, if we send them on a field trip, they still under the student requirements on the trip. And so if something were to start to take place there, something like don't really disperse and get lost or do all this other kind of stuff. So that's a whole can of worms to look at a later date, but I thought I would bring that up and say, that didn't be
Wouldn't that,
considered here.
wouldn't that get addressed like in the admin regs? Something like that,
It could,
maybe.
so
Yeah.
it could, but I was saying, I didn't see that there, and I'm saying, maybe we'll think about that later on, in terms of,
Right, because we really can't hold this one up and still get this approved by the
No.
start of school.
Yeah.
So either something addressed in the admin regs or, it could be in a separate policy, something that our director of activities, athletic director might.
Oh, yeah. Or even in the field trip policy.
Yeah.
right, and it may,
Because it would apply to all of that.
yeah, and so that would probably be an opportunity for them to say, we're doing all this for right here, so we need to make some adjustments on the activity or the inside of that for people.
Something like a
on
bus
field trip.
evacuation drill or something.
That would be a good recommendation, a good investigation, that's all, to be documented and have that passed on in that way. Any other discussions concerning this policy? If not, then I would recommend again that this policy be moved on for a warning at the next board meeting that meets as in that order. And hopefully Lisa said we get them all in this month. So for warning, hopefully we'll do that.
This Thursday is Sandgate. Next Tuesday is the Union Elementary District. North Bennington and Arlington will be next Wednesday night. MAU will be the following Wednesday night. The SU meeting will be moved to the 20th.
Yes.
Moving it to the 20th.
Yep.
Yeah, it can't be this. So by the 21st of June, all board meetings should be held.
Yes, but Stangate's already been warned.
Right.
It should, just with those two, and not all of the others?
Yeah, we could do an amended tomorrow with it.
Okay.
Because we'll get amended anyways, because they just did the Zoom link for that meeting. And I don't think Amy got it till after 4, so I know it
Okay,
was warned. And that's Thursday night, so tomorrow we definitely could do it, so
okay.
she should amend that.
Okay, so you can make that happen. Just hand carry something if necessary, and make an adjustment in the agenda for the warning of those particular calls. The final item that we had on was the tracking sheet, which is listed to tell us where everything is in terms of what boards have had an opportunity to look at one and adopt the policies. And so, there is things in blue that tell you, where you are and what school district has done what and what we're waiting on and when the next time they'll meet to be done. So, there, and then if not, there are some that we're now turning around that we're gonna be reviewing to, be updated on this sheet. So, with that, I don't see anything else, and besides, we'll continue on with the sheet, in terms of the tracking. The things that we had down for others on here, I would like to speak to that for a few minutes, so forth, in terms of other future consideration of policies. 5084, personal use of wireless communication. We need to be reading that again to understand what it is that of a concern out there for that. And dress code. Things have changed a lot here, so we need to talk about the dress code and how it affects the inner workings of the school.
And both of those two were first to a request of building-based administrators and what they're struggling with, particularly on wireless communication and the dress code.
The dress code is from when I was in high school, just for.
Well, the wireless device, I think, is like 2000 or something.
Yeah. And so in that one, and I know what we tried to do here, we really wanted to try to, when these things started out, cell phones and all this other stuff, we wanted to try to educate the kids as much as possible. There was a lot of highways to search the information and so forth out there. And we wanted to have that left up to the actually building administrators and the instructors in the classroom, whether they use these or not. And I know they've had some challenges because of being consistently across the board with everybody. So that's what we need to be talking about, is how we can consistently do something and make sure that we get an education benefit out of it. Along this line, but we can't have disruption of the classrooms and so forth along this line. Disrespectful in the use of these devices. So that's one of the things we need to strongly look at when it comes to personal use of wireless communication. And we'll talk about the dress code too, that we try to describe things along that line to make sure that the environment wasn't distracted and vice versa. So do some good reading out there. The next one is 5175, possession, sale, and distribution and use of illegal substance. This is, Bennington has a crisis going on right now and all over the place. So we need to take another good look at that so that we can try to help administrators and students with what's going on in our town and neighborhood along that line with the policies and best educate them out there with this. So that's why that one's on. And the next one to follow is 4100, alcohol and drug free workplace. You can't say it any better than that. It's a workplace free. But yet we need to talk about some other means of the policy that's affecting that free workplace. And the last one was driver's ed. And I don't know who brought that on who asked about driver's ed, but I do know that we got a lot of students that keep saying they can't. They need to get into driver's ed, they need to get into driver's ed, so.
Yeah, it comes from the Agency of Education, in the last month, right, it was the last month, sent that model policy to all of us, and so that's why we're putting it on, future considerations.
Okay, so the Agency of Education is the
Correct.
one that's sending this on to us. I know that students will you can't satisfy them, and I said, well, what's the hurry?
Good thing we're driving.
And they all want to get in and get out. So I'm hoping, I haven't read this one, but I'll be reading it. So we'll find out some good things for the next meeting. So, and those are what we have now for future consideration. And so at the end of the meeting at the last part here is to say that what happens, we've heard some scenarios of how policies are added on to the task force to be reviewed, coming from administrators, coming from the Department of Education, they're coming from the public. And so all we need, and we come in from other administrators, that these policies need to be reviewed. And so we'll like to try to continue along that process to receive information on certain policies that may be not clear or may be out of date, they think, in terms of what's happening currently along that line, or just needed to be enhanced in a certain way. So I just wanted to say that that's how we get the policies on there, so it's to the public. Anybody, if you know of one or see one, know some, then you can send that information on. We can add that on for possible review in the future.
Okay.
And so that's all I have for today's meeting, unless there are some other things that we needed to discuss. If not, our next meeting is supposed to be for September. Is that correct?
Yes, but I didn't look at a date.
If we,
Month.
yes,
You need a calendar date? What is it,
yes.
First Monday.
Well, it
Oh, no, it can't.
can't be the
No,
first
can't be
Monday.
Monday. Labor Day is on the 4th, so we always run into that.
11th,
It's the 11th, it's the next day,
September 11th.
September 11th. And if we have to have an emergency meeting, we'll have one, but I don't know, things that go around and so forth along that line. Okay. So, with that, I would like to thank you all, for helping me and help this committee meet this requirement that we get out of here in time for the next meeting. And after reviewing everything, it's about 5:13. And remind the public that homework is the key, is to review and understand everything, so that we can move swiftly. Thank you, and I call this meeting to be adjourned.
Thank you.